Aloha Reject Nation, I'm Greg Alba.
John Humphrey.
We're gonna watch top 10 box office bombs that ruined studios from WatchMojo.com. Top reward tier request from a man named Cameron French over at our Patreon. Whatever video you request, we must definitely do and put up on the YouTube channel. And today comes from that good man. Let's roll into this.
Hey, they can't all be hits, right? Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 movies that bombed so hard they bankrupted studios. Before we begin, we publish new content every day, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. For this list, we're taking a look at box office bombs and disappointments that caused a movie studio to go bankrupt, taking into account their critical reception. We're using the term bankrupt loosely, however, meaning that the films in question don't need to have officially filed for bankruptcy. Instead, they could have significantly hurt their studios financially, caused a sale or merger, and/or caused them to shut down. To put it simply, these flicks severely crippled their respective production or distribution studios. Number 10. Superman 4, The Quest for Peace. The Cannon Group Incorporated.
When I escaped from prison, I had one thing on my mind.
Cannon.
The end of Superman.
After 3 mostly solid entries in the Superman film series, the character's rights were sold to Cannon Films, a company with a history of financial woes. Superman 4 The Quest for Peace was intended to have a budget of $36 million, but that was soon reduced to $17 million, and even then it still failed to recoup its debts. This thriftiness was apparent on screen in spades, from a visible lack of production values, a weak story and script, and a horribly lame villain, and it dissuaded fans and critics alike, worsening the studio's already strained financial situation. The fallout from its facing bankruptcy saw Cannon change hands when it was taken over by Pathé Communications. Despite varied efforts to pay off its debts, reorganize the company and switch execs, it ultimately closed up shop in 1994.
Superman, the subject of our newest exhibit, has graciously donated a strand of his hair to the museum, so we can all have the fun of seeing how strong he really is.
Number 9. Raise the Titanic. Associated Film Distribution, ITC Entertainment.
What is
With
this?
Hollywood legends like Jason Robards and Sir Alec Guinness on board, Raise the Titanic appeared poised for box office success. Unfortunately, that's not how things played out.
And God himself, they said, couldn't sink her. Then in 2 hours, she was gone.
The film made back just $7 million of its $40 million budget, with producer Lou Grade quipping, quote, "It would have been cheaper to lower the Atlantic." Some claim that the author Clive Cussler's public dismissal of the film, based on his novel of the same name, was partially responsible for its poor reception. This, along with a poorly timed film about the village people, set in motion a series of events that would lead to Associated Film Distribution, the British film distribution company that ITC Entertainment set up to distribute their movies in the US, to be sold to Universal Pictures in the early 80s. Despite continuing to produce content, ITC itself became defunct in 1998. Number 8. Astro Boy, Imagi Animation Studios. After making waves with TMNT, their animated Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles film, Imagi Studios were ready to take the next step in becoming major Hollywood players. Unfortunately, that next step turned into one of the biggest cinematic disappointments of the decade, Astro Boy.
I thought I'd found it, but I guess fitting in can be a lot more complicated than it seems, huh?
Dear boy, if you only knew.
The movie flopped hard at the box office, managing to recoup just $42 million of its $65 million budget. Astro Boy wound up being the final film produced by Imagi Animation Studios, which went under in 2010, leaving a short list of uncompleted and abandoned projects in its wake. Number 7. It's a Wonderful Life.
No way.
Liberty Films. It's a Christmas classic now, but It's a Wonderful Life was actually a box office dud. This is in part because, although it was released just in time for Christmas on December 20th, 1946,
Shot like a lighthouse.
It didn't actually get a full national release until January 7th, 1947, a day by which most people are pretty well Christmased out.
I guess I'm not quite the football type, huh? You look wonderful. You know, if it wasn't me talking, I'd say you were the prettiest girl in town.
Barely earning back its $3.18 million budget, the film's poor reception left its production company, Liberty Films, unable to recoup costs, on the verge of bank foreclosure and seeking new ownership.
Wow.
They found it in Paramount Pictures in May 1947, which made It's a Wonderful Life the only film the company released independently. Under Paramount's ownership, Liberty would release only one other film, State of the Union, before closing in 1951.
Triple X.
Ice Cube, yeah.
Number 6. Heaven's Gate,
this movie.
United Artists.
Oh,
I
yeah.
never started.
Heaven's Gate
Stuck
was
it.
highly anticipated, and that's just what led to its failure.
I thought United Artists
With
has
The
been around
Deer
for a
Hunter,
long time.
His second film as a director,
Michael Cimino.
Michael Cimino became a double Academy Award winner and was granted
This
carte
movie
blanche
is
when
on
Heaven's
so
Gate rolled
many
around.
kinds of lists.
More bullets against each other. What are you, crazy?
This resulted in a film that was well behind schedule, over budget, and rife with allegations of animal abuse and directorial megalomania. Once completed, the final project had a runtime of nearly 5.5 hours, eventually trimmed down to 3 hours and 39 minutes. However, audiences did not show, and the box office take was a mere $3.5 million on a $44 million budget. This prompted the sale of United Artists to MGM Studios shortly thereafter. Number 5. Final Fantasy, The Spirits Within, Square Pictures. In 2001, Square Pictures, the film leg of Japanese video game company Square, decided to give Final Fantasy a big screen adaptation. The result was the $137 million animated epic Final Fantasy The Spirits Within.
Well, nobody asked you to save me.
The film featured the voice work of Alec Baldwin and Donald Sutherland, and drew considerable praise for its photorealistic animation.
Looks pretty great.
But still failed to connect with a broad audience, taking in only a worldwide gross of $85 million.
That's your plan? We wait and see what happens? Yes.
In fact, the underperformance was so great, it was enough to significantly delay a merger involving the studio's parent company with Enix. Fortunately, Sony Corp provided Square with some capital, and they recouped some of the financial losses thanks to video game sales. After the merger went through, only Enix survived, with Square Pictures becoming a consolidated subsidiary of Square Enix and Square Co. Limited dissolving.
Jane, do you mind if we stop talking? I'm trying to concentrate here.
Number 4.
Weird
Titan
voice
AE, Fox Animation Studios.
See, the Titan was truly
This is Fox
the most
Animation.
advanced ship in the universe.
I've owned this
That
movie
ship
my whole
has
life
the
and
power
never seen
to
it.
reunite the human race.
Never
to
seen
give
it
us
either.
a home.
On paper, Titan AE seemed to have hit potential, and it featured an all-star cast including Matt Damon, Bill Pullman, and Drew Barrymore. Fox Animation Studios looked to be on a roll, one that would hopefully allow them to compete with the likes of Disney and DreamWorks. However, Titan AE's massive budget, convoluted plot, and unclear demographic led it to being a massive box office bomb.
Yeah, well, who's to say it would have worked anyway?
Fox Animation Studios had been in trouble for some time,
It's
having
like
laid
Halo.
off hundreds of employees the year before. Unfortunately, Titan AE pushed them off the cliff, and a little over a week after its release, the company shut down.
They let me live, provided I kill all of you before they get here.
I mean, it's been smooth sailing for Fox ever
They
since.
could be here shortly.
Number 3. The Golden Compass.
Was
New
this
Line
New Line
Cinema.
Cinema's last
This
movie?
studio had hoped to recreate the tremendous financial success of the Lord of the Rings film series when they put the Golden Compass into production.
Let's not be too hasty. I see there's no need for a dust-up.
Adapted from a popular line of young adult books, the film boasted a budget of $180 million, making it one of the most expensive films of the year. By the numbers, this gamble paid off, as the film grossed $372 million worldwide. However, that $180 million budget was funded by the sale of the film's international rights, with only the $70 million domestic take going back to New Line. This failure is seen by most as the moment that forced the studio's hand into merging with Warner Brothers, meaning that
That's
New Line
what
would no longer
happened.
be a studio that was separately operated.
Because I was like, I've seen their
Number
name all
2,
the time.
Cutthroat Island, Coralco Pictures.
I knew you'd wind up here at some point. That being the cheese, and you being the rat.
Thing is, man, I'm basically a shallow man.
You know you've made a horrible mistake when you file for bankruptcy before your movie hits theaters. Such was the case with Coralco Pictures, which filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection a month ahead of the release of 1995's Cutthroat Island. Intended to be the studio's comeback, the movie was not only light on star power, but was also funded by the sale of multiple films, including Stargate, which not only fared significantly better but spawned a massive television franchise. Cutthroat Island, meanwhile, made just $10 million against its $98 million budget, leading to bankruptcy and a sale of assets
That's
to
a
French production company Studio Canal.
Success, Mr.
Mr. Blair. My slave has found Cutthroat Island. Mark it on the chart.
Before we unveil our top pick, here are some dishonorable mentions.
You like that? You want those bleeding heart types? Well, hey, cops kill poor people kill cops. That's the circle of life. Hakuna Matata.
I'm glad to see you.
I'm glad to see you too.
To Bora Bora and other romantic places.
Isn't that my club?
If Hustlers wasn't a hit, STX Entertainment would be on this list.
Oh, the antler.
Anybody know what means? I think I just figured it out.
Number 1, Battlefield Earth, Franchise Pictures.
Does all of Earth look like
That's
this?
an embarrassing name.
I'm afraid so,
Yes. Especially now.
Voted Worst Picture of the Decade in 2010 and winner of 8 Golden Raspberry Awards, Battlefield Earth is one of the first movies that comes to mind when you hear the words box office disaster. Based on a novel by Scientology founder L. Ron Hubbard, the film was a longtime passion project for star and noted Scientologist John Travolta. Despite being turned down by almost every studio in Hollywood, Travolta finally found a backer in Franchise Pictures. However, the combination of a poor box office return and the fallout from legal issues surrounding the means by which the film was financed led Franchise Pictures to file for bankruptcy in 2007.
Maybe you were absent the day they taught economics at the academy, Kurt.
Do you agree with our picks? Check out these other great
So
clips
many
from
Dutch
Watch Mojo,
angles in
and
that
be sure
one
to subscribe
shot.
and ring
Oh,
the bell
yeah.
to be notified about our latest videos.
I mean, the makeup in Battlefield Earth looked pretty cool. I'd be curious to see Watch Mojo put together a list of studios that have high probability of going out of business at some point soon. Paramount's really pulling teeth lately.
MGM?
Paramount's been struggling a lot. Like, they're really honing in on their Mission Impossible franchise, but
It's their franchise.
they have not been doing too hot all around. It's crazy when these like juggernauts of movie studios start going under. The C1, Carolico? They produced Terminator 2.
Really?
Yeah, I always remember. Every time I see that logo, I think of Terminator 2. The C forming. So I have a nostalgia for it, but I don't know what happened to that company. Sometimes these studios you think are dead, and then their logo suddenly appears again. It's like whenever I see a Dimension Films logo, like, what? I thought they were out of business.
Yeah, things get absorbed and turned into labels instead for other bigger companies.
Or like how Orion Pictures has been coming back around again lately.
And
Like,
you see New Line with the Warner Media underneath it.
yeah,
now.
and I always see Orion Pictures with like RoboCop or something, and like we saw Child's Play and that Orion Pictures logo pop up. Like, oh, I forget about these guys. But Carlico, they had Stargate in the same year they did Showgirls and Cutthroat Island, so
that helped.
Makes sense why they went down, because they were hot, man. They had the Universal Soldier, they had Cliffhanger, they did a lot of big. There's a lot of big movies they did, especially in the '90s. It's so easy to look at like the box office bombs, but this is a fascinating list to think about studios that went out. I never could remember which studio produced Titanic.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, there's a Fox Animation movie studio.
Yeah, and the second they brought that name up, it was like a brick. I was like, oh yeah, I remember Fox Animation used to exist. Funny enough, I never did see Titan AE, and that's probably when I forgot that Fox Animation existed.
Yeah.
And weirdly, that was the one movie out of this list, perhaps, that watching the footage made me want to go back and check it out. Because the rest of these kind of looked like you could tell why they were flops.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, United Artists, I used to see their logo a lot. Like, they produced some Bond films, too. I remember Tomorrow Never Dies. What, are they, like, merged with MGM or something like that?
Could be. I mean, MGM has had famous struggles as a studio. The thing that's fascinating about this is you start to realize why the studios cling so heavily to these major franchise events, because, like you pointed out, Paramount now kind of can only rely on Mission Impossible, and for a while MGM could only rely on James Bond, and now it seems as though they've merged.
Yeah, United Artists has merged with MGM because like they're producing No Time to Die. So, oh man, this is wildly confusing. This is why everything just should be under Disney. It's easier to keep track of that. It's easier to keep track.
Monopolies, man, I'm telling you.
Yeah, like I always hear about studio wars and all these things, and I'm always like, wait, what? Who belongs where? Even studios get confused with each other, man. I remember the trailer for like The Gallows 2 came out, and I put this out on our community page because I just thought it was so funny. Whatever company that is co-producing with Blumhouse, was it Lionsgate or something?
Lionsgate.
Yeah. Blumhouse put out the trailer on their channel, because they made the movie. And then I went to watch the trailer, And then it said this video is blocked by Lionsgate.
On copyright grounds.
Yeah, on copyright grounds. And I'm like, you guys produced this together, didn't you?
This is idiotic. You're literally robbing yourself of advertising.
It's sad. Really, the craziest one to me is It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah.
I haven't heard of half of these movies. The other half, I'm like, yeah, they're known to be disasters. But there's only one movie here that is considered
a classic.
That's considered a great film.
It's one of my favorite films.
It's a yearly watch for a lot of family households.
Yeah.
I'd heard that it wasn't a success when it came out, and I also heard that it wasn't originally a Christmas movie, and then they sort of tweaked their marketing to make it like a Christmas movie. It's not hard to believe that if you watch the actual movie.
There's Christmas in it.
Yeah,
but it's not the point.
It's really like the last 20 minutes that are like, it's a Christmas movie.
Yeah.
Really, the most of it is the pursuit of happiness, pretty much. So,
And I mean, there's also that point they brought up about that movie, which I thought was interesting, where it wasn't necessarily that the project went awry or you had a megalomaniacal director or anything like that. It was just, people were Christmased out and they released this in early January, so maybe it just kind of landed with a thud and nobody really was into it at the time. And it's also, kind of a heavy emotional movie for that time of year.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, like, even timing, can really hurt.
That's true.
I'm fascinated by Rennie Harlin's career because the only movie I was pretty certain would have to be on this list was Cutthroat Island, because that's that movie's legacy, is just being a disastrous bomb. And the thing is, like, I feel like that follows Rennie Harlin around because that dude still works, and I feel like those are the projects he seems to get, are things that have perhaps a riskily big budget that tend to flop hard.
It's unfortunate, man.
Yeah.
Going back to New Line Cinema, like The Golden Compass was very much hated on, but now isn't it a show now for HBO?
I think
which Warner Brothers is partnered up with now.
Yeah. There's his Dark Materials, right? They're the same world of lore. Because I've always heard this name kept in the cultural lexicon because of its sister properties and the fact that his Dark Materials is coming.
It's funny for franchise pitchers to like. Sometimes you give yourself such a bold title for a production company, and then you just go right under it, which is embarrassing.
Bold title, or I noticed very generic. There are a couple of these companies that were just like Associated Distribution, which just sounds like the most generic. But especially for Battlefield Earth, which could have had franchise potential if they had nailed that.
It's weird. Sometimes you think these movie studios have like infinite amounts of money, because they're movie studios, and then you hear them go under. Like, so many of these movies, I didn't even know who the studios were that made these movies. And then it seems like in the cultural zeitgeist of things that now we're more aware than ever, especially if it's under the Disney umbrella or Fox umbrella. All that talk about Fox is kind of crazy to me. Ever since the Disney-Fox merger happened, all the Fox-related films have not been doing well.
Nope.
Like, none of them. It's pretty gnarly how bad it's been. And, like, they bought it, and it's supposed to be this big deal because we're like, we can finally get Deadpool and Wolverine and Fantastic Four and Disney.
And everything else you
and
guys
everything.
have.
And it's like Ford v Ferrari is supposed to be coming out this month.
I hope it's good.
And that was like $100 million production budget. And I'm like, is that movie gonna make that much money back? Because they are marketing that bad boy a lot.
Well, that's the thing that I kept thinking about throughout this list too, and that broke my heart for The Golden Compass, was that, like, it technically kind of made its money back, but especially with what we know so much more about advertising now that it's like nowhere near the amount of money they would have needed to make to truly clear a profit.
Well, with foreign sales too, like a lot of movies, franchises especially, Terminator included, are able to stay alive because of foreign distribution. But in terms of the States making that money back, they get like at most 50% of the foreign sales. Usually it's less. So
movie accounting has to be the most complicated field to enter.
This is a fascinating list.
Yeah.
This is a fascinating list. Oh, can't wait for Paramount to be included on here soon.
Yeah, it's just going to be Disney and Warner's after a while.
You hear stories like this, and then you know why studios want more franchising. But I think we're probably also in a day and age where we have streaming. I think there's going to be a lot more partnerships happening with movie studios as well.
Well, that's something, yeah, I mean, that's something you've seen. I was always surprised to see through TV. The studio collaborations happen a lot in the TV space because everyone's sharing sound stages and productions, and Fox might not run their own show on their own network, you know, but I feel like, too, with the streaming now, everybody's bringing their content direct to you, so I feel like the presence of a studio is going to be something different moving forward now that you have Disney Plus and Warner's is going to have their own thing, and
well, there's HBO Max,
and there's HBO Max, and they're their own production company as well as a network that runs a whole bunch of other movies. Yeah.
So yeah, with everything happening, it's going to be fascinating to see how, because studios are now going to be relying heavily on their streaming services. On top of that, too, there's a discussion of the original films of those streaming services are going to be producing now. Which films normally would they have put in the theaters are now going to just be going directly to their streaming services. And will they do that with any of their franchise properties? Like, will they make sequels that go directly to HBO Max or Disney Plus or something like that? And all honesty, there's the one thing you got to give a weird kind of credit to, or lend some credence to, something like with Disney and what they did with Spider-Man and Sony, because of the global conglomerate that those franchise properties are, and then wanting characters to cross over, it's made a lot of us learn a lot more about franchise dealing, contracts,
distribution,
having a better understanding of why people hold on to these IPs and such,
and why they milk them the way they do.
Yeah, like, of course, a lot of us have always sort of followed it, but then there's, I think, more and more people invested in the conversation of studios and streaming and all these things. And I think it was around the time of understanding the way these deals work, of why aren't all these Marvel characters over here?
Yeah, exactly.
And I think it really started linking up in people's minds to try to understand this around then.
Maybe Spider-Man's to thank.
Like,
why is it hard to get Spider-Man in the Marvel?
That merger, and then also getting the ability to share these characters, has caused a lot of us to learn a lot more about these things. So I think a few years ago this conversation would have been like, oh, that's interesting. Now it's like, oh, this makes you can see add it on top of it. You can see how this all came to be. Yeah.
You can see the ecosystem so much better and where the ripples are and what it means for the bigger picture, whereas before you might have just gone, oh, interesting, that's unfortunate.
Yeah. It's like that thing of, do I want more original films? Absolutely. But then you hear about this, where you're like, oh, that's right, I used to see those logos all the time.
Yeah.
But now they're out of business.
Maybe a movie I love helped put them there.
Because if you look at this list, some of them are IPs, based off of like Final Fantasy's a game, which is a movie I actually liked, by the way.
I contributed to the box office a few times for that movie.
So like that had a built-in audience, Golden Compass included, but the only one of these that had a sequel that tanked a studio was Superman. So it even shows there that like a sequel can tank a studio.
To the biggest hero at the time. Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, this was fun. Anything they left off this list that you'd like to talk about, let us know. You guys can subscribe to The Real Rejects and click that notification bell to get notified whenever I got a YouTube video up. Sir Cameron French, I wanted to say to you, buddy, that the amount of times that we have been talking, I want to encourage you to start your own movie blog, dude. I think you should get it going. I don't know what your voice sounds like. You refuse to speak with us over the phone. I've given you my phone number. Just been waiting by there going, when's he gonna call me? You won't call me. You won't FaceTime me. You won't Skype. But your opinions, I think, are really well laid out. You're quite thoughtful, and you often state things that make me go, never saw it that way. So I think you should start up a blog, dude. That's where I'm going here,
I got a name for it. Film French.
French films.
French films. And you only talk about American cinema.